The day the judge handed my wife the house, my car, and nearly every dollar I'd worked for, she turned to me with a smile and whispered, "You lost, David." But while she celebrated outside the courtroom, I checked my phone and saw the message from my lawyer. Surprise now. My name is David Carter, and for 10 years I believed I had built a life that couldn't break. I was a financial analyst, careful, structured, always thinking 2 steps ahead. My wife, Emily, was the opposite, charming, spontaneous, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make everyone feel small without saying a word. When we first met, that confidence pulled me in. I thought she completed me. Looking back now, I realized she was studying me. In the beginning, everything felt perfect. We bought a house together in a quiet neighborhood, took vacations twice a year, and talked about starting a family. I handled most of the finances because I was better with numbers, and Emily never complained. In fact, she encouraged it. "I trust you," she used to say, smiling as she signed whatever I put in front of her. At the time, it felt like love. Now I know it was convenience. The shift didn't happen overnight. It started small. Emily began asking more questions about our accounts, how much we had saved, where the investments were, what would happen if something went wrong. At first, I thought she was just becoming more responsible, but then the tone changed. It wasn't curiosity anymore, it was calculation. She'd get irritated if I didn't give exact numbers. She'd go quiet for hours after checking our bank statements. Then came the late nights. She said she was meeting friends or staying late at work, but something felt off. Conversations became shorter. Her warmth faded into indifference. I'd sit across from her at dinner, trying to talk, and she'd barely look up from her phone. Every time I asked if something was wrong, she'd brush it off. "You're overthinking," she'd say. But I wasn't. One night, I noticed she left her laptop open. I wasn't trying to snoop. I just saw it. An email thread, legal language.
My name.
Words like asset division and filing timeline. My chest tightened as I read just enough to understand. She wasn't just unhappy, she was planning. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next day either. Instead, I did what I've always done. I observed. I started paying attention to everything. The way she spoke, the way she avoided certain topics, the sudden interest in documents she'd ignored for years. It all pointed to one thing. She wasn't just leaving, she was preparing to win. The incident that confirmed everything came a week later. I walked into our house early one afternoon and heard her voice in the living room. She didn't know I was home. She was on the phone laughing, a kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. I stood there frozen, as her words hit me like a punch. "He has no idea," she said. "Once I file, I'll take the house, the savings, everything. He trusts me too much." There was a pause, then she added, softer but sharper, "He's going to be left with nothing." Something inside me cracked that moment. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like glass under pressure. I didn't walk in. I didn't confront her. I just turned around, walked out of my own house, and sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at nothing. That was the moment I stopped being her husband and started becoming her opponent. The papers came 3 days later. She didn't even try to hide it. She handed them to me across the kitchen table with a calm, almost bored expression. "I think this is for the best," she said. No apology, no emotion, just strategy. I looked at the documents, then at her and nodded. "If that's what you want," I replied. She seemed surprised by how easily I accepted it. I could see it in her eyes. She expected anger, maybe desperation. But I gave her nothing, and that unsettled her more than any argument could have. What she didn't know was that I had already made my first move. That same week, I met with a lawyer. Someone I trusted, someone who understood how people like Emily think. I laid everything out, the emails, the conversation I overheard, the sudden shift in her behavior. He listened carefully, then leaned back and said something I'll never forget. "She's playing checkers," he said. "You need to play chess." And that's exactly what I did. Years before any of this started, I had structured my finances in a way that most people wouldn't notice. It wasn't about hiding money, it was about protecting it. Investments under separate entities, accounts tied to long-term contracts, assets legally defined in ways that made them untouchable in a standard divorce settlement. At the time, it was just good financial planning. Now, it became my shield. Over the next few weeks, I stayed quiet. I let Emily believe her plan was working perfectly. She grew more confident, more careless. She'd make comments about starting fresh and finally being free, as if the outcome was already decided. Meanwhile, I gathered everything. Documents, records, timelines. Every detail mattered. Court day came faster than I expected. Emily walked in like she had already won. Perfect outfit, confident posture, that same smile she'd worn when she handed me the papers. Her lawyer presented their case with precision, painting me as passive, uninvolved, someone who had let his wife handle everything while he sat back. It was a good performance, convincing, even. And for a moment, it worked. The judge ruled in her favor on the surface level. She got the house. The car. A significant portion of the visible savings. I saw the satisfaction in her eyes as each decision was announced. To anyone watching, it looked like she had taken everything. She turned to me as we left the courtroom, leaning in just enough for me to hear. "You lost, David," she whispered. I didn't respond, I just nodded and walked away. Because the real outcome hadn't even begun yet. 3 weeks later, the consequences started unfolding. The house she fought so hard to keep came with a mortgage she hadn't fully understood, structured in a way that required steady, high-level income to maintain. The visible savings she took were tied to short-term liquidity, already taxed and diminished. The car? Leased under terms that made early ownership expensive. Meanwhile, the assets she overlooked, the ones she never questioned, remained untouched. Long-term investments that continued growing. Business shares that generated consistent income. Accounts she assumed were irrelevant because they didn't look impressive on paper. That's when the call started. The first one came late at night. I didn't answer. Then another, and another. By the end of the week, she had called me 17 times. When I finally picked up, her voice was different. The confidence was gone, replaced by something I had never heard from her before. Uncertainty. "David, we need to talk," she said. I stayed silent. I think we made a mistake," she continued. "There are things we didn't consider. Maybe we can work something out." For the first time, she wasn't in control. And she knew it. I let a few seconds pass before responding. "You made your decision, Emily," I said calmly. "Now you live with it." She tried to argue, to negotiate, to regain some ground. But there was nothing left to negotiate. The game she thought she had mastered was already over. In the end, she didn't take everything. She took what looked like everything. And that was the difference. Because while she walked away with the illusion of victory, I walked away with something far more valuable: control, stability, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the strongest move isn't the loudest one. It's the one no one sees coming. In the end, I didn't feel the victory I thought I would. There was no dramatic moment, no overwhelming sense of revenge, no celebration waiting on the other side. Just silence and clarity. For a long time, I believed winning meant taking something back, proving a point, making the other person feel the same pain they caused. But standing there, months after everything settled, I realized something different. Real winning is walking away without losing yourself. Emily thought success was measured in what she could take. The house, the money, the control. She believed that if she walked out with more on paper, she had won the entire story. But life doesn't work that way. Because what she didn't understand is that value isn't always visible. It's not always in the bank account or the property title. Sometimes, it's in patience, in discipline, in the ability to stay quiet when everything inside you wants to react. I could have fought loudly. I could have exposed everything the moment I found out. I could have turned it into a war. But that would have made me just like her, reactive, emotional, short-sighted. Instead, I chose control. I chose to think long-term, and that made all the difference. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. Not everyone who smiles at you is on your side. Not everyone who says "I trust you" actually does. And sometimes the biggest mistakes happen when you ignore the small signs because you want to believe in the person standing in front of you. Trust is important, but blind trust is dangerous. At the same time, this isn't just about betrayal. It's about preparation, about understanding that life can shift when you least expect it and being ready for that shift without losing your foundation. I didn't build my safety net because I expected my marriage to fail. I built it because I understood that anything can change. And when it did, I wasn't destroyed by it. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Don't wait for things to fall apart before you start thinking clearly. Don't let emotions control every decision. And most importantly, don't measure your worth based on what someone else takes from you. Because at the end of the day, they can take possessions, they can take titles, they can even take time, but they can't take your ability to rebuild, to grow, and to move forward stronger than before. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt betrayed, underestimated, or taken for granted, remember this. Your response matters more than what happens to you. You don't need to scream to prove your strength. You don't need to rush to show your value. Sometimes, the most powerful move is patience and letting the truth reveal itself over time. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have confronted everything immediately or stayed silent and played the long game? Do you think what I did was justified, or would you have chosen a different path? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I read every single one. And if this story made you think differently about trust, relationships, or strategy, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more real stories like this. Because sometimes, the biggest lessons don't come from winning loudly, they come from winning smart.